Come in, Ocean Sailor. Come in, Ocean Sailor.
The Ocean Sailor Podcast. Brought to you by Ocean Sailor Magazine and Kraken Yachts.
Hello and welcome to Ocean Sailor Podcast with me, Dick Durham, and him, Dick Beaumont. This is the second part of our Guns on Board issue, in which we interviewed, and we interview again, Rene Tiemessen and his exciting stories of facing pirates. And this time we're going to hear what the result of that was. We also had a poll, and it gave you a chance, by splitting the podcast into, it gave you listeners a chance to come in and vote on the poll as to whether you'd have a gun on board or not. So now we'll go to Dick Beaumont, who tells us a little bit more about how that vote was split. Dick.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Ocean Sailor Podcast, wherever you are in the world. It was a very, very emotive subject we discussed, and I think I can say that, Dick, you were a little bit surprised at just how much interest there was in this subject.
I was surprised, Dick. Yeah, you'd said it was going to be, there would be a lot of interest in it, and whilst I don't doubt what you're saying, I thought, crikey, surely this is something people would rather shy away from. But no, not a bit of it. There was a lot of interest in this issue. Clearly, it's one that needed to be aired because there's a lot of doubts around what you should actually do. So yes, I found it was interesting.
I think obviously it's a great deal less interest for people that are not going off and around the world. But for people that are going off around the world, I guess I'm going to say this, and just as I'm thinking about it, you obviously, when you live in a country and you're in that country, you understand the security issues. They might be high, they might be low, but you understand them and you become familiar. What happens when you go off in a sailing yacht is you arrive somewhere brand new with almost no background, but you might have read a pilot guide or talked to a couple of other people, but you're experiencing that place and its security issues, if there are any, for the first time yourselves. And you can't help being nervous and wary. And that wariness feeds into, I think, a hyper awareness of any potential security issues. If you go on Noonsite, very good website, we've mentioned it before, and you look at the Piracy Reports on yachts, you will find that there's quite a lot of reports that say things like, I felt uneasy, I was sure something was going to happen, we were very conscious that everybody was looking at us, and blah, 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 blah. But nothing happened. And I think that's largely because people are in this heightened awareness that I'm talking about. And what's interesting about they're
strangers in a strange land.
Yeah, exactly. They are. Yeah, they are. Oh, it's why you do it, of course.
Yeah,
you go to these places to experience how civilizations around the world are very, very different. And of course, what we did is we carried out a poll. And that poll threw up some interesting results, and it was actually around 4-1 against taking arms on board or having arms on board. And even surprisingly, with the American subscribers and voters, the result was 2-1 against having arms on board. That quite surprised me. I mean, I must tell you, amazing reactions though. I mean, one guy, I won't name him, he's in the magazine, but he put his article, wrote in saying that essentially the problem was that the people weren't carrying powerful enough armaments. This guy, I think, was anticipating having enough weapons on board to take out a small nation. It was quite
yes, a man of war, didn't he?
Yeah. But anyway, it was a great subject, and there's much more to come. As I say, even in America, and I say even in America because I think the perception amongst Europeans is that everybody in America is pro-guns, but clearly that's not true at all.
No.
I know there's a very strong anti-gun lobby in America, But of course, we don't see any of that. What we see outside of the USA is guns, and all the problems that they are actually causing. So it was a real eye opener. It was very, very interesting. But I guess
it shone a bit of a light on that issue, didn't it? Very much so.
It did shine a light on the issue, and I think the second part of Rene's podcast, which we're just about to hear, will throw even more quandary into people's minds about what's the right thing to do. I think it comes out in the end quite clear what he thinks.
I mean, that's it, isn't it? I mean, Rene's experience is interesting, but even he says this is just a one-off. Well, you don't know really what's going to happen.
No, you don't. And we don't want to give people the impression that obviously everywhere you go in a sailing yacht, this is what you're going to run into. A very, very small part of the world does have these problems. And what we're going to do in the next couple of podcasts is discuss, the areas that you might avoid and precautions that you can take. So hopefully that's going to be quite interesting.
Yeah, as I say, I mean, Rene, of course, who had an automatic weapon actually aimed at him, and we heard about his reaction to that in this podcast that we've already broadcast, tells us how he feels about returning to such an area in this podcast, which was also quite surprising.
Well, yeah, it is.
Or maybe it wasn't.
It didn't really surprise me because I didn't understand why he went there a second time, to be frank. I've said that to him. It's not a big surprise to Rene that I thought he was mad going back there.
That's what I suppose is what you call Dutch courage.
Dutch courage, yeah, exactly. So anyway, I guess the best thing we could do is listen to what Rene has got to say. Yes,
indeed. And I think the listeners will find it very interesting because it is a genuine first-hand account from a top sailor and a good guy. And he's no shrinking violet, but you'll see what happened to him.
Out of the 100 boats that approach you, that are all skiffs in the Indian Ocean and Southeast Asia, 99 are fishermen. And they just come at raging speeds at you. And they want to know if you've seen dolphins, or they want some water, or because they have nothing on board, or they want a t-shirt. 99 out of 100 are smiling guys with a fish in their hand wanting to sell you some fish.
Well, when my boat Moonshadow, when I met you, we had Moonshadow. And when my boat was first built, and she was built in Taiwan, and I sailed her out of Hong Kong. And in preparation to going, just about everybody I spoke to said, "Oh, you're going to the Philippines. They're going to steal everything off your boat. They're going to rob you. They're going to do this. You're going to do that." And I left with quite a feeling of concern. And we sailed down from Hong Kong. It's about a 600-mile trip to Subic in the Philippines. And about 200 miles left to go, I was down off watch having a kip, and one of the guy comes and wakes me up. He says, "Deck, Russ is on the helm, and he thinks you should come up on deck." So I come, okay, I get myself straight out of bed. He said, I think we got a problem. And right, okay, great way to wake up. So I wake up, I run up in the cockpit, and I said to Russ, "What's the problem?" And he points, and in the far distance, probably still 2-3 mile away, I can see it's quite a large fishing boat. He said, "Well, that fishing boat," he said, "I'm a bit concerned." So I said, "Oh, it's quite a long way. It's just made a 15-degree alteration of course." No problem. So he said, "Yeah, but that's not it, Dick." He said, "I've already done that 3 times. And each time he's corrected and come back head on to me." Okay. So in the time that this is being discussed, he's obviously getting nearer. So I've got my binoculars and I'm looking out, and Jesus, they've all got black balaclavas. And now I can see there's an outrider skiff on either side. And if you read up in all of the books and look for the traditional method of piracy, there's going to be the mothership and there's going to be the fast skiffs, and this is it. So I got all the guys on red alert, and I've funny little story actually. What I also did is I told two of them to stay below deck, and as they got closer, keep popping their heads out of hatches with different hats on. So it looked like we had twice as many people on the boat as we actually did. Anyway, they're now getting quite close. I've made an alteration, he's made an alteration, and now I am 100% convinced this is a piracy attack. And the guys are all revved up, and obviously it's getting nearer and nearer and nearer. And now at the last minute, he's just 50 meters or 100 meters maybe off my bow. He's all of a sudden he makes an alteration. To starboard, and he goes past us about 30, 40 meters away from us, but going in the opposite direction. Total relief. What was all that about? He's just come for a look. And then he turns round. And so I see him doing it. He's faster than us. It's a much bigger boat. I can see there's a dozen guys on board at least. And I don't even remember where the outriders are. And he turns round. And I've gone, guys, we're still in trouble. They're coming back. They're going to come alongside us. And he's come steaming alongside us, but he's not narrowed the gap. So meaning that he's caught us up, but he's now parallel to us. And right, okay, so what's going to happen now? And two of the guys suddenly dob down into the hold, I guess, and come out holding up a tuna, one, and the other one's got a wahoo, and the other one's got two lobsters. Wants to sell us fish, right? Now, there's no question, and I could tell you, we did stop and we did exchange. We gave them cold beers. They wanted tinned fruit because they're out at sea for God knows how long at a time. There's no question, if I had a gun, I'd have shot them. I definitely would have done. I know I'd have been blasting, whether I'd have shot them or shot over their heads. And obviously I'd have been totally wrong. So I get your point there. But Rene, tell us about your rules in particular in the convoy that you were involved in on the return trip.
When we are heading back through the Indian Ocean, we thought it was wise to organize our convoy. At that time, now we're speaking 2011, we'd been sailing through Southeast Asia for 4 years, and it was time to come back, and we headed back to the Med, and we thought it was wise to organize our own convoy instead of being part of some convoy with rules that we didn't want to engage in. So within moments, within a week, we had 35 people who wanted to join us. We called it the Thailand to Turkey convoy, TTT. And so we started organizing this, and I made clear from the beginning, on our first meeting, to my astonishment, there were hundreds of people there. And I immediately said we had to set out some rules about how we wanted to sail, where we wanted to stop, what the route was going to be, and so on and so on. And one of my first clear rules was no guns. There is going to be no guns on board, not with you, not locked, not stocked. If you are a gun owner, you have to decide here and now if you want to part from it or not. And if you don't, then you're fine, be my guest, but then you're not part of our convoy. Because I don't want to be in danger. I don't want you to bring others in danger. And I'm definitely foreseeing that at some point, you probably are going to kill somebody, and most likely also yourself. So that was the rule, and that is how we sailed out. Now, to make long story short, somewhere on the Indian Ocean, we got in trouble. First of all, in the Indian Ocean, the rules had definitely changed. In 2011, as you know, that whole piracy thing exploded because the pirates now took the motherships, which they had initially captured, out to sea from Somalia with skiffs on them, sailed them all the way up in the northern parts of the Indian Ocean, then took the skiffs off and planned attacks from there. So suddenly, instead of being only in harm's way close to the Somali coast, now the whole Indian Ocean was infected. So what we did, we decided to sail all around it. So we sailed from the Maldives all the way up the Indian coast, almost to Pakistan, then over to the Strait of Hormuz, and then as close as we could along the Omani and Yemenite coast. That wasn't safe, but it was safer than all the other options. So this is what happened. And then on the Indian Ocean, I got into trouble. I got into technical problems. We had a problem with our gearbox that we couldn't get under control. We had to MacGyver it all the time, try to make parts and do things and to keep it running. And obviously we were sailing a lot. But I said to this group that was with me, I said, okay, let's not keep each other in danger longer than necessary. You guys just sail on and we meet each other in the tip of the Strait of Hormuz. And this was what happened. And we caught up with them in the Strait of Hormuz, just at the edge of the Strait of Hormuz. And when I did, and on this first, it was 4 o'clock in the afternoon when we met each other, of course, we sailed into the night north to south along the Omani coast, as close as we could. And we started because at that moment it was pretty dangerous. We said, okay, the rules are we sail under engine plus sail. Yes, we are more visible with sail, but we also are likely to pick up more speed and maybe save on some diesel and so on and so on. And during the night, we only have our lights are dimmed. We only have very little tiny lights, so you could see where each one of us was. We wouldn't use our VHF other than handheld VHF on low range, so on the low power transmitting power, 1 watt. Our radar deflectors were off. Everything we could do to avoid making contact with others was limited. And during the night, because we were sailing so close together, you could literally see each other on board. And I noticed that some of the people of the group that I had been left out of for a couple of days because of our problems, they were discussing things on the radio, and I didn't.
Rene, you fell behind and then you caught up. Is that what happened?
Yes, I fell behind and caught up. And when I came back, of course, they wanted me to become their leader again because that was who I was. And then I felt during the night that they were discussing something, but I didn't hear them on the radio. So I went over to one of the boats very closely. And there was a lady and her husband from England, and she was really feeling uncomfortable. And she said, Rene, I've got to admit, there's a problem. I said, what is the problem? And she said, on the Brazilian boat, there was a boat from Brazil, there's an American crew, and he has made us make a Molotov cocktail. So now we all have Molotov cocktails on board. And he's carrying a big gun.
Oh, crikey.
And I thought I got a heart attack. Yeah, I thought this is not happening. Now I'm surrounded with boats in my convoy that all carry a Molotov cocktail. And the guy had a big gun, an American military guy. So the next morning I made a bold decision and opened up the radio to everyone because we had these morning radios. And I said, listen, this is what's going to happen. Alondra, good morning to everybody. I've got an announcement to make. I know that you guys all have Molotov cocktails on board. I think it is the stupidest thing you can do because the chances of hurting yourself while lighting such a thing and throwing it to somebody is much bigger than whatever can happen in this area. As I said, most people are fishermen. Don't worry about it. And when there is under attack, you stand no chance with a Molotov cocktail. I said, the other thing is, I've made it clear that I don't want weapons in this convoy. Apparently, that and that boat carries weapons. I want this to stop immediately. Or you guys sail ahead, and I'm staying here behind, and I wait one day and will come after you. Or you stop here, and I will leave, but I will not enter or join this convoy anymore.
So Rene, you felt so strongly it was a real bad move. You were prepared to carry on and sail on your own
100%.
rather than sail.
100%.
Okay.
And what happened was I released the button of the transmitter, and I thought silence would come. Of course, people were shocked that I was suddenly coming up with this. And I released the button immediately. Oh no, Rene, yeah, this is did it that boat. No, we're with you. And we said, no, we immediately tossed it overboard. No, we throw the Molotov cocktails overboard. The only one who didn't respond, obviously, was the Brazilian boat with the guns on board. And it took about 15 minutes before his wife came back on the radio and said, yeah, we made a decision. We obviously do want to stick with you. We've decided to throw the guns overboard. So that was the end of that.
They did throw their gun overboard?
Yes, threw them overboard.
Wow, okay.
And then I said, listen, it's the only way. Either you throw them overboard or you're not in this convoy anymore. Because in the meantime, and this was in the early morning hours, a fishing boat had appeared, and he was waving around with the gun on deck. And I thought, that is where I really thought I was in the wrong movie. I thought, now I'm entering a really bad B movie, and before you know it, this guy starts blasting away onto no one and nobody. You never know what might have happened then. Anyway,
Rene, can I come in there?
Yeah.
Because this is I think what's come out of this is something very interesting. And that is, you are clearly anti-guns. You were faced with a gun. You reacted the way you did. Then in this convoy, these people had guns, but they were suffering from the cultural difference that you've already mentioned. In other words, they knew they couldn't really use them. What they wanted leadership. And they felt that your leadership was worth more than their weapons.
100%, within seconds. I'm not anti-guns. Yeah, I'm not particularly a gun lover, but I'm also not so much against guns. I can understand that there is circumstances where a gun, if you know how to properly use it, is very useful. But the thing with guns is that if you have them, at some point you have to use them. So I'd rather stay away from it. But in this circumstances where people up front believe that they will enter into an equal in a fight of equality, and where they're obviously not, I have news for them. They are. Yeah, it's completely useless. So yes, it is, and I only foresee trouble with them.
Then, Rene, having achieved that, the irony of the situation is you then did have, I think, another attack.
Yeah, about 2 days later, along the Omani coast, we were obviously keeping very close to the shore. We were in daily contact with the MSCHOA, that is the American Defense Force there. We were in daily contact with the UK MTO, which is the British convoy, the NATO we were in contact with, and a number of loose, scattered Navy vessels that were patrolling on their own, one from Thailand, one from India, one from, you name it. There were some 22 Navy vessels there. One thing noteworthy is they don't work together. Like if we are planning to do something together, the first thing we would say, okay, you do this and we do that, we have 22 boats, let's defend this area. They don't. So it's not like you call the UK MTO and then so you call the English and then the Americans will also know where you are. No, it's not. What doesn't work like that? You call the English, this is where we are, this is where we're going, and then you call the Americans, this is where we are, and this is where we go. And then you call the NATO, and they all want to know every day, every minute of the day. They have no clue of each other's behavior, whereabouts, or whatever. So when we finally got in trouble, just as a side note, the nearest boat was 400 miles away because nobody is listening to each other. And with all 22, they're hanging around the Strait of Bab el Mandeb, to make a quick score and tell the home front that they did a fantastic job with their Navy vessel. That's how it works, Dick. There's no team play. There is no working together.
Yeah, sure.
So, anyway, 2-3 days into the convoy, into that stretch along the Omani coast, on a sunny afternoon, I'd say, suddenly there is some, I don't know, 4 or 5 skiffs appearing on the horizon, and our game plan always was that at that moment we would immediately close into each other, weather permitting. We would keep the sails on, but stay in very, very close range. And if you've done this a couple of times in the beginning, it's a little bit hairy, but after a while you get used to it. You can sail actually really close together. And ours were maybe 10, 15 feet apart. So diamond form, we would sail all next or in each other's vicinity.
And how many boats is this?
That, in that part of the convoy, there were maybe 10, 11 boats.
Okay.
I'm not sure anymore. I would have to count them. Anyway, so on each boat were some 3 people, 3, 4 maybe, or 2 or 3. But let's say all in all, there were some 30 to 40 people in that convoy. And then 3 skiffs appeared. And as I've told before, they are there immediately. From the moment you see them, somebody sees them first, a skiff's appearing. So you would immediately close in and start this diamond formation. And now, speed up, try to speed up as much as you can, but you're always bound to the lowest speed in the convoy, which was in ours 5.5 knots. Was not the best speed we had. The slowest boat was 5.5 knots. And then they started circling around us about a quarter of a mile away. And in big wide circles, high speed, and sometimes they would, because they were circling clockwise and anti-clockwise, so they were sort of passing each other. And at some moments they were stopping at each other and then talk to each other and so on and so on. But they weren't coming closer, but they were also not going further away. And in the meantime, of course, we went on the radio to on the radio to call MSCHO and MK UK M or UK MTO and the NATO and Channel 16 and try to raise some attention. We knew that there was a Dutch Navy vessel close by, but they didn't answer. And of course, this radio was answered to others, and that made it that I think they sort of disappeared at some point.
And Rene, you've clearly seen they're armed.
Yeah. Now you can't see that from 250-meter distance, but this was clearly not fishermen, because they would have come for the approach and they come at you. You know that, you've seen that. There were also too many people inside the boat. There was 5, 6 of them in each boat, which is normally in a fishing boat not the case. And they had tarpins over the front of the boat, which normally are there to cover up for a ladder or something. So
you're not under any doubt at all that they're a threat to you.
Yeah, at that moment we absolutely 100% sure they were a threat. Yeah, and everybody else thought so. There was a clear understanding. Look, while crossing the Indian Ocean and while being in that area, and as you have been, you sort of get to learn who's who. And you make the obvious mistake, like you've just said with the fishing trawler. We have had a similar thing where you think, wow, this is a little bit dodgy, and you come out the right way. This thing was not disappearing. And this took 1.5 hour, 2 hours of circling around us.
Oh, really? Okay.
This was not going away. Nothing changed in the situation. They were talking to each other. You could clearly see that they were making up their minds about what to do next. But of course, the sight of having that many boats very close together with only 4 or 5 skiffs to attack the bunch doesn't probably make it. In the end, they thought it wasn't feasible enough to make it through. And we were talking on the radio, and it could well be that they had VHF radios in which they were listening in on the calls we had.
So they kind of might have thought that you're going to get some assistance, and there's like 10, 11 boats together. And, I guess what you're really saying is it wasn't the easy proposition that they were really looking for. Is that it?
Yeah, I think they were looking for the fish was just a little bit bigger than they could chew. Yeah, and you know how that works, Dick. But now, and this is interesting, of course, and I've never heard the American back about it later. Never came back to me. None of us, and because then later we had dinners and we had barbecues together and whatever, none of us in that instance said, what I would have wished to have the Molotov cocktails there. Why didn't we have the gun anymore? Everybody understood from being there at that moment that it would have been the worst thing ever.
The guns would have been a liability to you.
The guns would have made it, the whole situation, turned it into a complete disaster. Now imagine that they attack. Imagine that they come all at you with 5, 6 boats, with possible 25, 30 guys in there and attack you. And they all are armed. What on earth are you going to do with your 3 little itty-bitty shotguns and you 25 Molotov cocktails? Where are they going to go? Yeah, I mean, that is 100% assurance for disaster.
I think the thing is, Rene, I'm still very interested in that first occasion when you had a gun pointed at you by one of these guys, and you reacted the way you did with anger and surprise. You found you weren't frightened.
There's nothing brave about that, Dick.
I'm not. No,
nothing
brave. I totally understand that. I understand that you didn't fear, but that isn't because you weren't frightened beforehand, as I might have been if I'd been considering it. I think, crikey, I'm just going to. Anyway, the point I wanted to make is that your reaction was one of anger and how dare you do this. And the point is, he didn't fire that gun. If you'd had a gun and pointed it at him, what do you think would have happened?
That is exactly what I'm saying, that I was no threat for the guy.
No.
I was not a physical threat to the guy. The only thing I was I was a threat as obviously feeling stronger than him.
Yes. And you were causing him an issue. It was an issue. You were a problem for him. You weren't going to lie down and roll. And over.
he understood that I had the upper hand mentally, not physically, mentally.
Okay.
And
that's very interesting.
And I think that turn the tide. If I would have had a gun, and I would have drawn it, obviously, because now I'm in the situation, if there was ever a moment to draw the thing, then draw it now. Now we're standing opposite of each other. And that is exactly where you lose. You lose 100%. You've got a guy you have a guy on the other side of the street that has no value of life or death, or at least a complete other value, who is drugged up to the rim. Yeah. So what's your decision going to be? Yeah.
So the other interest is that with Dick Beaumont's experience, when he had the fast boat chasing him and trying to board him with grapnel irons, all the rest of it. Fortunately, they didn't have a gun, so Dick's reaction was actually a bit more aggressive. He did a turn and tipped the guy in the water, which of course you can do once you realise they haven't got guns. But I guess, Dick, you might have felt a bit differently had they got a gun.
Well, I might well have done it. And I know this sounds weird, but I didn't actually consider at the time that they might have guns. And obviously they couldn't have done, because they'd have drawn them, I'm sure, and started taking potsers. But so obviously they didn't have guns. And in Papua, it's a funny thing because there aren't roads, and villages can be 100 miles remote from the next village. And they are living, as I said, like 1,000 years ago, literally in a very primitive way. So it didn't even occur to me they might have a gun. But at the end of the 6 boats circling round you and all the rest, what happened, Rene?
Again, in this instant, at some point, I think that we were too big a fish to fry, and they called it a day after 1.5 hours. Obviously, we were heading out to sea. Where we went, it went rougher and rougher. We were not giving in. We were not changing anything of what we were doing. We were still talking on the radio very loudly and aggressively, and they at some point told us they were going to send in choppers, and I don't know, which they never did, by the way. And
so maybe they heard that on the radio as maybe, you can only speculate.
We were close under the Omani coast, very close. It was in sight, where you also may expect at some point that Coast Guard turns up. At that moment, the Omani Coast Guard was pretty active, patrolling in small boats. And obviously, they didn't want to encounter any one of them. So that whole situation just made it that they thought it's too close to the land, too many boats. They're talking on the radio, la-da-da, let's not do this.
What I was going to ask you was, I mean, it's very difficult, this, and it's probably an unfair question, but I'll ask it anyway. I mean, can you give any advice after this? I mean, what does somebody do?
Oh, yeah, look, people are most likely to buy a shotgun or something, because that's the obvious weapon to buy.
Yes.
But an 8-round shotgun is not going to help you against any of the weapons that you are probably going to face.
Sure.
If you know that, for instance, in Yemen, and we were there on several occasions, but also in Sudan, I've heard that, and other places, you can easily get an AK-47 for around $100.
Right.
They offer them to you. I would be very surprised. I mean, nobody's going to buy an AK-47. Everybody's going to buy an ordinary shotgun, which carries at most 8 to 10 rounds. Maybe with a subloader, you can do maybe 12 or 14 gauge shotgun. It's not going to help you against an AK-47. And it's not going to be the only AK-47 you face. There are with 4 or 5 guys carrying an AK-47, and they use them regularly to fight each other off, to fight others.
Right.
And so unless you want to start blasting away immediately, and with a shotgun, you fire a round, and then you have to reload it, and you have to fire another round. And these guys just pull the trigger and they're coming, and 20, 30 bullets are on their way.
Yeah.
So I don't think, I mean, the whole thing in every of the instances that I had, because, there were more during the 8 years. Yes, we had a guy coming on board and wanted to rob us and la, 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 and it all happened. None of them it would have made sense. None. I've never seen it made sense at all. The guy that wanted to rob us, I threw him overboard, and that was the end of it.
Well, yeah, I want to come in here as well because, and I guess this is really the point, and this is the decision or this must contribute to the decision. If you are going to consider it, A, you've got to be very sure you're going to use it, and B, you must be professionally, you've got to be familiar with it.
And all the professionals that I spoke, that we've also met at sea, who were protecting other boats, they all told me, as far as I've met them, they've all said, stay away from it. You're not fit to handle it. You're not programmed to do it. You're not in the sort of life that we are. Don't even go there. I mean, let's be real. You most likely, if you are a European, most likely don't have a gun in your car. You don't carry a gun around. So why would that suddenly change when you are on a boat?
Yeah.
The environment doesn't really change. You meet the same sort of people, though they are in a different way on the water. But for 99 out of the 100 cases, they will come in a friendly way. And in that incident where they aren't, you stand hardly any chance at all. So yes, I understand all this clutter about it. I understand also the emotions that run around people trying to protect themselves and their boat and their family and whatever. But I have yet to find somebody that I thought was really capable of thinking like, yeah, this is going to happen and this is going to work out well. So
I think, Rene, that is my experience of what you've just said, of course, is secondhand, but it's now 20 years ago since possibly the world's most famous yachtsman, Sir Peter Blake, lost his life in the Amazon on an expedition when pirates came aboard. One of them was armed and he held a gun to the head of one of the crew. Sir Peter Blake pulled out a rifle, shot fired, and then the thing packed up and he was shot dead. Of course, I did interview Lady Pippa, the widow of Sir Peter Blake, at her home in Emsworth, and there all around the house were pictures of the family. He was a family man. That he in my view, it's a huge mistake to have had a gun and let alone pull it out on these guys. All they took in the end after this shooting was an outboard and a few watches.
I mean, I'm listening to what you're saying, and as I've just said to you, the incident I had in Papua, and to be honest with you, I think you're right. I think what you're better off to do is consider ways that you might better securitize your own vessel and look at means, of course, avoid areas that are known to be a problem. And we're going to discuss that actually on the next podcast. We've got a guy coming on, and he runs a security company called Mast, which is specific to seaborne security. And he's going to tell us about particular areas of the world that we should avoid, because I think we want to try and get this a bit in proportion. I've sailed my boat for best part of 40 years, and we've just talked about 3 or 4 instances I've had in areas that actually were quite well known to be difficult. Papua New Guinea, in my case, in your case, obviously, Pirate Alley running up into the Red Sea.
Let's face it, I've sailed all my life. And if you come down to what has happened, then there is a number of incidents that anyone could experience at any time. Somebody climbs on board, half drunk, maybe, I don't know. But I think, let's not only talk about the bad things, because 360 days a year, it's beautiful.
Rene, I accept what you're saying, that, the majority of the time sailing is great and going to these far-flung regions is fantastic. Of course it is. But nevertheless, most people don't have the dreadful incident that you put up with, once having a gun in your face, and the second time being surrounded by clearly what were pirates with your young child on board. Now, this did have a big impact on you, which we wrote about in the magazine. Could you tell us about that?
Yeah, for sure. But, you have to understand that this was a period of, the second time was a period of 6 months from January to July under huge stress. I was the leader of a convoy that I didn't want to be in the first place, but sort of was born out of necessity. These people hung on to me like I was the Messiah, which I was obviously not. Then facing all these issues, suddenly the Indian Ocean turning into a piracy-infected area much more as before. Then all the countries that we came to under the Arabian Spring coming under turmoil. It started in Oman when they protested against Qaboos, the Sultan. Then we come into Yemen, and literally on the day we come in land in Al-Mukalla, having crossed the Indian Ocean, this city falls into the hands of Al-Qaeda. We're anchored off there. They start shooting at each other right in front of us. Then we come to Yemen, or to Aden, where there was a complete civil war. Then we come into Sudan. They had just sorted out North and South Sudan. And then we come to Egypt, where they had just thrown out Mubarak.
Yeah.
So, and then in the meantime, I have to tell that I took my gearbox out on the way from Thailand to Cyprus 21 times. And I had no source of repairing it. We just MacGyvered this, welded pieces on and rebuild it, and putting extra discs in and whatever I did just to keep it running. Not from running it well. It sounded like an old diesel lock, but we kept it running.
So by the time you got back to the Mediterranean, not only had you sailed through the Arab Spring, and not only had you been expected to be the Messiah, but you had a young child on board and you'd be surrounded by pirates.
Exactly. You have a girl on board for 2 years old, and she's hopping around every day, finding everything. I mean, when we saw pirates, she saw, look, Papa, there's men in the boat there. Yeah, men in the boat. Yeah, sure. Yeah, that's not the kind of men we want to see. So by the time I got into the Med, and you keep on going, as I said before, once you are en route, you don't think about turning back and all the difficulties you have. You just keep on going. And then once back in the Med, at some point I come to the Turkish coast. I was so screwed up that I literally left the boat for anchor that whole summer, and nearly never sailed, just wanted to rest and relax. And then years later, so my life continued, and we stayed in Turkey, where we bought a sailing company, and all is fine and well, until years later, now some 4 years ago, I suddenly started getting anxiety attacks and not being able to sleep anymore. And I was even afraid to go out on the boat. I didn't feel happy going out on the boats anymore. I was feeling sick, physically sick and exhausted. And of course, I didn't know what it was. I had no idea. I really had no clue until I went to see a physician, and then I went to see a therapist, and they started talking about all sorts of experiences, and they said, yeah, you're suffering from PTSD and
post-traumatic stress disorder.
Yes. And you know, there were moments, it took 2 years, and it got worse and worse and worse, where I thought of even stepping out. This is very strange if you have a family, and from my background, to at some point think like, whoa, maybe it's better if I'm not there anymore, because then the suffering stops, and I don't know how to turn this around. And then, 2 years of therapy, intense therapy, made me better. But I can tell you, and I never knew this existed. I had no clue what PTSD was. I had no clue what that would entail. But I can tell you, if you've been in that situation, I have a complete different view on these things nowadays than I had at that time. I'm super happy that I got out of it. Got out of it in a way that I feel comfortable. 2 years ago, I would have not participated in this conversation. Now I'm enjoying again being on the water, although I still have hesitations. I'm certainly not going out with anyone. So, it has changed my life. And I think that will not happen to everybody. No, not for sure not. None of the people that I know have had this. So my wife didn't have it. Nobody had it. But it happened to me, and I'm a pretty, well brought up bloke that didn't have such things before. So,
well, thank you very much indeed for telling us. That must have been difficult, because it is important to hear that, Rene. And all I can say is that I'm very pleased, I'm sure Dick is, that you're now over it, and that you're now running this fantastic Goulet company in the Med there, which people can come. And I've been on one of your boats, and it seems an absolute joy. And that has to be the other side of this black time.
Yeah, no, if you find a way to get out of that and to come over that, and I was lucky to find a therapist that I could work with, and it's also maybe I was lucky there. But and if you find your way out of that, but it's not easy. It's not like, okay, there is a simple cure for it. I know a lot of people who will never recover from it, and I know that you will never completely recover from it, but you will find a new life. And I can easily talk about it now, and I also the determination to what and what not to do under these circumstances for anyone who's going to go on an adventure like that. And I would absolutely advise anyone who can do and go on an adventure like that and go sailing to remote areas. But be prepared, be aware, and it makes the determination not to do something stupid even bigger than it did before. Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I was a pretty loose guy. I'm not so loose anymore about that.
So, as they say on the Today program, Prime Minister, this is a yes or no answer. Would you go back there, Rene?
No.
Okay.
And that was a one-word answer. And that is notable because it's, very clear. It's also notable that is the first time in Rene's life, I'm certain, he's ever given a one-word answer. I think we should also say, I don't know how it's going to work out, but I'd like to say a big thank you to Rene, and a big plug for his company, Flaka Sailing, which is his Gulet sailing company in Turkey. If you want to go and have a real experience of proper sailing and proper Turkey, Rene's without any doubt the guy to do it with, and he's very capable Turkish crews.
Yeah, we are happy to have all of you on board whenever you are. When you want to discover this coast, while I look out my window here, I look onto the island of Kos. The Greek islands are nearby. It is an absolute blast to sail here, one of the most friendly sailing areas in the world. And for anyone experienced and non-experienced, if you're an experienced sailor but want to just have another view of it, then you're most welcome to come check out our website, www.flaka.nl, or our Instagram, Flaka Sailing. I hope I've inspired some people there today, and I hope I'll be back on one of your podcasts.
Yes, well, thank you very much, Rene. And of course,
listen, guys, if you decide for a present or payment, just let me know. Yeah, don't make it too big. I don't know if I have space in my bank. You know which whiskey I like, Dick, and not the sort of cherry one.
Yeah, sorry, your line's gone funny, Rene.
All right, guys, have a nice afternoon. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Cheers. Thanks. Thank you very much indeed for lending us your ears. If you enjoy what you're hearing, then please subscribe to us, or even better, leave us a review. Tell us where we're going wrong or where we're going right. Always good to hear from you. Thank you very much. Well, I'll tell you what, that was brilliant. What an interesting guy, and what a lovely man as well, and very open. I envy his view as well. He's looking out over Kos. I'm looking out over Canvey Island. There is a difference. But no, seriously, he was a great guy.
Dick, you're right. I mean, he's a great guy. And I must tell you, I think it was incredibly brave of him to really tell us exactly what had happened to him in the post-traumatic stress disorder and the meltdown. Because, as I said, I consider him quite a good friend of mine. I haven't seen him a hell of a lot since Thailand, but we became very good friends there. But I have seen him over the last 12 months quite often while I've been in Turkey with White Dragon. And I sussed that something had changed in him. But actually, I don't feel... Perhaps it's not something you go and start asking somebody out the blue, is it? Excuse me, Have you had a nervous breakdown? But
unless you're me,
yeah. But he's been very honest and very frank, and exposed his soul, and good on you, Rene. Good on you, Rene. It was a great story, and I mean, as I said right at the end, and I think he couldn't add anything to how he answered your question. Would you go there again?
Mm.
And it's the only time I've ever heard Rene give a one-word answer. It was just no, and that's the end of that subject, wasn't it? It was just no.
Yeah. It was indeed. No, it was excellent that he should reveal the fact that he was diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder. Not an easy thing to do. Usually hear it coming from the mouths of people who've done a term in Northern Ireland or Afghanistan or Iraq or somewhere like that. So clearly it was, a very raw experience for him. So anyway, I'm glad he's over it now.
Yeah, me too. I mean, I think it was a very big ask for anybody to try and lead 30 boats. 30 boats.
Yeah, absolutely.
Trying to lead 30 boats across the English Channel. It's going to be aggravation. Yeah. But 30 boats on that run from Sri Lanka up through the Red Sea to Turkey. My goodness, I wouldn't fancy it. No. I'm not afraid to tell you. I will tell you, as I said about when we're talking about, would we go there again? I kind of feel that there are some answers that can easily be solved for Papua New Guinea. And I think that most other incidents I've had around the world have been at the behest of what amounts to opportunistic crime, not organised crime, and not organised. And I've got to tell you, you can't get me to go in any of those regions. I'm just why load the dice that against your favour? Why do that? No. So but anyway, it was a great story and great fun, and fun. It was funny. He is a funny bloke, and he's good. He doesn't exactly keep his light under a bushel, you might say, as they use the English phrase. He tells you how it is.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, well, that's about it for this week, I guess, Dick. And it's been a lot of fun. So as we close up, have you got any interesting Dick Durham anecdotes or catchphrases? I know you like to finish with one.
I think a lot of our listeners may well have heard about the thespian and Hollywood actor Johnny Depp. I like him myself, but he's been accused of being typecast, of not stretching himself enough. And apparently all the Hollywood studios have got together and said, you've got to be more flexible, Johnny. So he's taken note of that, and he's remaking one of his classic films. It's to be called Pilates of the Caribbean.
Oh, God. They get worse, Dick.
It's really bad, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, I think I'll just say goodbye.
Yeah.